So I wanted to share my experiences a year into the pandemic because I've had the opportunity to reflect on this kind of tumultuous year. And I think it's helpful for other people who are grappling with some of the issues that I've been grappling with personally through this past year. So, of course, at the very beginning of the pandemic, it was traumatizing. Everything felt like it was out of control, and I couldn't do anything about it. And I wasn't really in a space to make amazing life changes and be super productive and learn a bunch of new hobbies, right? That was not my reality. I was using existentialism and Buddhism, philosophical ideas to kind of cope with what was happening. And then I was distracting myself so I could feel a more of a lightness at times. So distracting myself with cooking, which I already love, distracting myself with baking, distracting myself with reading restaurant takeout menus, distracting myself with Netflix. And then I also finally had the opportunity, because I wasn't wasting my time sitting in my car during rough commute, to think about things or read about things that I never really read up on. So I also didn't have social obligations or as many family obligations, right? So I had more time to focus on me, which was an incredible consequence of the pandemic for me. I know that not everyone experienced that because, especially if you have kids, that was not the case, but I don't. And I'm pretty happy about that. So with respect to some of the lessons I learned and some of the changes that I made as a consequence of the pandemic, I started doing things that I think I never gave myself the space to do. So I learned how to DJ. My partner knows how to DJ, and I never felt like it was important enough for me to spend my time doing. But because of the pandemic, I did it. And it's such a great outlet, and it's a creative outlet, and it's also a way for us to bond together. I started reading up on skincare and makeup and reading, watching videos on makeup tutorials that I thought were like too shallow to focus on before, right? It's like, oh, people are dying and social injustice is happening. And here I am reading about skincare. No, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. You can do both. And, am I an expert in skincare? No. Do I want to be? No. But I think it just helped me feel like, hey, here's something that I like to do as a means of kind of self-care. And even if it's shallow, right, it's okay. It's still something I have to do, right? Our skin is important. Got to maintain it. So that's just an example of how I allowed myself to do things that I thought were too shallow to focus on before because of this time I had to myself during the pandemic. And so even though it was really painful not being able to live in the way that I used to live, I really started appreciating how I had more control over my time, right? I didn't have to spend as much time getting ready for work. I could sleep. I could have the hours I wanted to have more so because I'm a night owl and waking up early is rough. So I've had more time to sleep, which is great, right? It's better for my health. I also, felt so drained sometimes because I spread myself thin, whether it was at work or whether it was in my social life or other things that I was doing. And so because of the pandemic, I couldn't do that. So I had this extra energy to do things that I wanted to try doing, such as baking, cooking, DJing, and we adopted a dog, and I have this amazing time then to walk her and bond with her and train her. And so that's been also a great consequence of the pandemic for me. And I'm not trying to say that the pandemic was just this amazing experience for me, because it wasn't, right? But I also have been privileged enough in this situation where I didn't lose my job. I didn't lose any loved ones. I ended up, being able to work from home, which is such an incredible privilege. And I want to acknowledge that, of course. But these are just some things that personally that at first I was too depressed to even think about. And then once the summer hit and I was able to see the sun and be in the warmth, I was in a better mental headspace to try out new things. Some of the other lessons that I think that I want to continue to apply to my life once things get back to normal, right, is being in more control of my time. So I think before I would always say yes to things, and saying no, I felt so bad, like I'm ruining someone's life or I'm really letting them down. But because of the pandemic, I gave myself the space to say no to things that were not comfortable for me. So, and that were not serving me or that were draining for me. And so what I ended up doing was I really wanted to work on self-improvement and think about whether I'm living my authentic life. And because before I just didn't really have time to think about that a lot. And so I decided to make a list of things that are going well for my life, things that I like to change, and things that I like to stop doing. And so those things that I decided to stop doing, I stopped doing. I noticed that I was doing them out of duty, not because they were enriching for me, and they weren't, and I didn't have to keep doing those things. And it felt so liberating to say no and say, you know what, I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore, right? And I want to be able to to keep having that courage to say no to things. Also, things that I wanted to change, like how I would relate to people sometimes, or how I would not say no to like friends or family when, whatever it was, whatever the situation was. And so I ended up saying no more to things that I didn't want to do or I didn't feel comfortable doing. Whereas before I would like push myself to do it, and it would be painful at times for me. So that's something that I'd like to change once, things are back to normal. Because I also have FOMO a lot, right? And so I wouldn't really give myself the time to relax and rest in between going to work and having fun time, right? I would kind of just do it all together, and it was draining and exhausting. So I really need, I plan on continuing to give myself the space to say no and to rest and relax and to engage in shallow self-care like skincare, right? It's okay to do that. And I just hope that once things are back to normal, that people, whether it's friends, family, colleagues, etc., will be more compassionate to us, right, to say no instead of demanding our time or feeling entitled to our time. So something that I've been really trying to focus on too is not just other people being compassionate, right, or just being compassionate to other people, or and vice versa, but being more compassionate to myself, right? So if I'm not doing amazingly with whatever it is, it's okay. It doesn't mean I'm a failure, right? I have a food blog. Nothing's gone viral, right? I'm not a food blog success. It's just something I'm doing and I enjoy doing it. And so being able to, it's helped me put myself out there more to get potentially rejected. But at the same time, I've gotten really positive responses to things that I was too scared to do. But then with the pandemic, I gained more courage to say, you know what, if I get a rejection, it's not a big deal because we're living through a pandemic. So being more compassionate to myself and others, along with not feeling like I'm letting people down or everything rests on my shoulders, right? So with the pandemic, I guess, or with things becoming or slowly, going back to normal, I think that we need to be able to be more compassionate to others with their time, but also be more compassionate to ourselves because we just, how are we supposed to live fulfilling lives if we're constantly beating ourselves and other people up, mentally, and of course physically? Not, that's not good to do either. So yeah, I just wanted to share kind of my experiences and my reflection a year into this pandemic.